Alfred the Great was king of the Anglo-Saxons, a defender against Viking invasion. Just few of the reasons why he is the only English monarch to be known as the Great. Alfred was born in 849, and served as king of Wessex, a Saxon kingdom based in the southwest of modern-day England to his death. He fought the Vikings, and then made peace so that English and Vikings settled down to live together. He encouraged people to learn and he tried to govern well and fairly. Alfred was the fifth son of Ethelwulf of Wessex and Osburh. At the age of 4, his father sent him to Rome, where he was confirmed in the faith by the Pope, and was anointed as king. He was the youngest of 6 children. Each of the sons succeeded to the role of king. Alfred was still only a young boy when his father died, leaving Alfred's older brothers to take control. At the Battle of Merton, Alfred and his brother suffered a serious defeat by the Danes' great heathen army. His brother died a month later, and Alfred was left to rule as leader of the Saxon kingdom. Alfred's grandfather, Egbert, became king of Wessex in 802. For 200 years, 3 families had fought for the West Saxon throne. At the beginning of the 9th century, England was almost wholly under the control of the Anglo-Saxons. Mercia dominated southern England. But its supremacy came to an end in 825, when it was decisively defeated by Egbert at the Battle of Ellendun. The two kingdoms became allies against Viking attacks. Viking raids increased in the early 840s on both sides of the English Channel, and in 843, Æthelwulf was defeated at Carhampton. After King Æthelwulf died in 858, Wessex was ruled by 3 of Alfred's brothers in succession, Æthelbald, Æthelbert and Æthelred. In 871, King Æthelred died, and Alfred ascended to the throne of Wessex, and the burden of its defense. While Alfred was busy with the burial ceremonies for his brother, the Danes defeated the Saxon army in his absence. The defeat smashed any remaining hope that Alfred could drive the invaders from his kingdom. Alfred was able to mount a resistance campaign, rallying the local militias from Somerset, Wiltshire and Hampshire. With all the other kingdoms having fallen to the Vikings, Wessex alone was resisting. Alfred won a decisive victory in the Battle of Edington. He then pursued the Danes to their stronghold at Chippenham, and starved them into submission. One of the terms of the surrender was, the Guthrum converted to Christianity. Later, the Danish king and 29 of his chief men were baptized at Alfred's court. At Wedmore, Alfred and Guthrum negotiated the Treaty of Wedmore. Under the terms, the converted Guthrum was required to leave Wessex, and return to East Anglia. With the signing of the treaty, Guthrum's people began settling in East Anglia. Guthrum was neutralized as a threat. The Viking army, which had stayed Fulham during the winter, sailed for Ghent, and was active on the continent from 879 to 892. There were local raids on the coast of Wessex. Alfred fought a small sea battle, against 4 Danish ships. 2 of the ships were destroyed, and the others surrendered. Alfred was forced to deal with a number of Danish raids. Among these were a raid in Kent. This was the largest raid since the battles with Guthrum. In response to this incursion, Alfred led an Anglo-Saxon force against the Danes. Instead of engaging the army of Wessex, Danish fled to their beached ships and sailed to another part of Britain. A year later, Alfred occupied the city of London, and set out to make it habitable again. He entrusted the city to the care of his son-in-law, Æthelred of Mercia. This is also the period in which almost all chroniclers agree that the Saxon people of pre-unification England submitted to Alfred. 1 year later, Guthrum, Alfred's former enemy, and king of East Anglia died, and was buried in Hadley, Suffolk. The death of Guthrum changed the political landscape for Alfred. The resulting power vacuum stirred other power-hungry warlords, eager to take his place in the following years. In 892, the Vikings attacked again. Finding their position in mainland Europe uncertain, they crossed to England in 330 ships. The force set out to march up the Thames Valley, with the idea of assisting their friends in the west. They were met by a large force under the 3 great ealdormen of Mercia, Wiltshire and Somerset. An attempt to break through the English lines failed. The Vikings drew their ships up the River Thames and the River Lee, and fortified themselves to north of London. The next year, they gave up the struggle. Some retired to Northumbria, some to East Anglia. Those who had no connections in England returned to the continent. In the years, Alfred also took the time to address the need for defense. He also took time to challenge traditional army structures, and introduced new methods to deal with the threats from overseas. Building work took place, ensuring that the settlements across southern England would be fortified against possible invasions. Alfred also took steps in establishing a navy, to tackle the naval capacity of the Danes on the English coastline. Another important step taken by Alfred was in his approach of unifying kingdoms that had previously operated separately. Under his leadership, a more unified Anglo-Saxon culture was forming. On the 26th of October 899, Alfred died from unknown causes, most probably caused by poor health experienced early on in his life.